Okay, so we need to take a look here at Canada's preparations for war. So just bear with me as I get there. Um, so I'd mentioned that Canada had certainly some dilemmas. It would be worthwhile for you to click on this link up here. It's a nice little recap video here. It's from an American perspective, but I think it does a nice job of sort of reviewing what we've covered to this point in terms of how we got to war. All right, so it'll get us to a declaration of war. All right, so in the Canadian specific situation here, we've got Canada preparing for war. Now, has Canada ever been in a war before? Well, not as an independent country. Not since Confederation at the very least here. Have we sent some volunteers? Yeah, volunteers participated in some other wars, but this nothing to this scale. All right, so we've got quite an interesting predicament here. Now, we'll talk about this guy, Sam Hughes. So the prime minister at the time was Robert Borden, and Borden's going to be pressured here to make a commitment, and you've got to do something here to get a military force together. And so he's going to appoint this guy, Sam Hughes, and he becomes the minister of the militia. He's a bit of a controversial figure for a variety of reasons, but I don't have time for that one right now. But Sam Hughes is going to be appointed to this role, and he's got quite a bit on his plate. And so, number one, he's got to be responsible for recruiting and also training the first wave of what will become called the Canadian Expeditionary Force. All right, so the CEF. All right, and that's the first title of the Canadian Army here. All right, so Borden here, we'll see, is going to make a pledge of 25,000 men in the first wave. Now, I guess, you can think about what would be the reaction here in Canada to a declaration of war. What's the average Canadian, young man going to think about this here? Where war is being declared on our behalf. So we've got to remember a few things. One of the things that would be important is that in 1914, Canada was not the culturally diverse country that we are today. All right, we were still primarily dominated by two groups. All right, those of sort of British ancestry and those of French heritage. All right, so those are the two dominant groups here. All right, did not see a lot of diversity beyond that. So, because this is a British-led war, there's still quite a bit of affinity here for the king and the empire. So many Canadians have got strong ties still to England, and the opportunity here to fight for the empire is actually a fairly appealing one. And the other thing we also have to consider is, this war had not happened yet. Nothing like this had ever occurred, and there's a lot of unknown in going into this war. And the average Canadian sort of had the storybook understanding of warfare. You go over, you get to wear this awesome uniform. They're going to give you a rifle. You're going to learn how to, hand-to-hand combat. And as most storybooks go, you get to go to Europe. Most Canadians had probably not traveled much further than a few miles from their home at this point. So you go overseas. You're going to shoot up the bad guy. And they're going to pin a medal on your chest, and you're going to get to come home, and you get to live out your days in your hometown as being this sort of great war hero. So with that understanding in place, this sort of naive understanding of war, enthusiasm was very high. And the first wave of recruits is actually going to be, it's going to be overwhelming. And it's here, Valcartier, Quebec, where they're going to be trained. And you can see just by this picture alone, you get Canadians of all sort of physical description here. They're going to exceed this 25,000 mark, all right? And it's somewhere in the range of about 32,000 Canadians are going to volunteer. So that speaks quite a bit about the enthusiasm for going to war. It's more of an adventure, I think, in the minds of these young men than it is about what this war is really going to be about. So Valcartier is going to be overwhelmed by because there's just more men than they could accommodate. But they will get a training here that is going to consist of lots of learning how to line up and march and file in and that sort of business. They'll get some hand-to-hand combat, lots of jumping jacks and calisthenics and that sort of thing, and different procedures. But the question, of course, is will they be adequately prepared for trench warfare? And that is going to be a definite no.